Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Special Education Forum. We are really happy to see you all today, especially in light of everything going on. We usually were like, how many people are going to show up? And are they all going to like stand against the wall away from each other? So thank you for being here. We know that these are trying and stressful times. We do hope to share some information for you today. We don't have a lot. If there was information that was already out there, you guys would know it already. So I want to maybe lower your expectations around coronavirus-related updates, but we are going to give you some tools and resources and give you some things to be thinking about, as well as kind of tell you where ODE is in terms of their plans to share more information. So, but before we get started, I did want to let you know just a couple of things. First of all, as you can see, we are open. We are holding trainings. We have another training for preschool PBIS Tier 2 and 3 tomorrow. We are planning to go as expected. We are open until something changes, and you will know that right away. But one thing that we are starting to hear is that some folks are being told that they are not to come here for trainings, that they need to stay in district. So what we're going to do in the next couple of days is take a look at our training calendar, and some of our staff are hearing this for the first time today. And try to figure out what is essential that you have to keep moving forward, and what are some things that if we had to, we could postpone. Because if we see either through closures or numbers going down, we may shift events into this room. We are actually recording this session right now. This is our first time doing that, so we're hoping that it works. But we may try to shift to do some things that are recorded. And we do have the capability of doing recorded sessions that we push out after the fact, as well as some live sessions. But please bear with us because this is all very new. And so we're mindful that in some cases people are needing credit or OCRA and things. We're going to do everything we can not to disrupt things. But at the same time, just knowing that there's only one room where we can record things in this way, we'll just keep you posted on how we're making those decisions. But I just wanted to let you know that. And of course, everyone's staying on top of the whole situation. Let's see. I think that's really it. Let me just quickly show you the agenda here. So the first thing we're going to talk about, and this had gone out to the region, is we just want to recognize the districts and buildings in our region who have gone to great strides to implement PBIS and have received bronze, silver, or gold recognition. So Heidi's going to lead us through that in just a minute. We're happy to have some extra folks in the room who come here to be recognized on behalf of their district. So we're going to start with that. And then we are going to do updates. We have a handful of updates. That will be where we do a little bit of coronavirus talk. We're going to try to not let that take over everything. Give it the time that we can, but then kind of put it away. And then the rest of the time is really going to be spent on talking about the One Needs Assessment, which, if you're not familiar, is a shift in the way that districts look at all of their data to take a comprehensive approach in deciding what district needs are and creating priorities within those. And there are a lot more opportunities for special education leaders, for student services leaders to be involved in that discussion, to have their data contributed into that discussion. And so some of you may have already heard about this, but this is a deep dive into what your piece of that would look like. This is a year that's optional, but we're hearing that many districts do want to move forward with using the One Needs Assessment, and next year it's going to be required. So either way, this is information that will be good for you to have. And then the last few minutes we're going to spend doing our usual opportunities for networking. We will turn the recording off at that point. We want to make sure that everybody feels free to say whatever's on their mind and, you know, ask the questions that they have with each other and have those conversations. So, okay. Team, did I miss anything? Okay, a lot going on, a lot to remember. Okay, then with that, I'm going to turn this over to Heidi so that she can recognize our folks from PBIS.
Thank you, Janine. And I did already last night have frantic texts from folks that were planning on being here this morning, and some of their districts are saying you cannot go out, so I'm sorry that that's happened. But if you are representing your any of the buildings or districts that we're going to recognize this morning, please feel free to come up and be recognized. This is just a reminder that even though this is we're in March of 2020, we are recognizing those teams that earned PBIS recognition for actually school year 2019 or the year 2019. Right now, the application for 2020 is open and available, and that is due May 1st. We have a slide regarding that as well. But this is, they were recognized in December of 19, and by the time we were able to locally recognize them, it's a little bit late, but we we wanted to make sure that we did that. So, the clicker. So, if you are represented from any of these districts or buildings, I would ask you to come up to be recognized. So I will read through all of them, but I know many of them are not here. These are all of our bronze recipients, and for those of you that are unaware, bronze is implementing tier 1 of the PBIS framework with Fidelity, and that means receiving at least 70% on the tiered Fidelity inventory, as well as turning in evidence that you are working with the framework, and that's something that we look at to make sure that all those pieces and parts are there. So we did have a couple of programs and buildings from Akron, and that's the Akron Early Learning Program. If you'd like to come up, I think we have representatives here from that program. Manhattan Community Learning Center. From Barberton, we have Barberton Preschool that was recognized last year. From Cuyahoga Falls City, and I noticed there's a spelling error there. Bullock, I apologize for that, Bullock Middle School was recognized. From Field Local Schools, we have Brimfield Elementary School that was recognized. From Green Local Schools, we have the Greenwood Early Learning Center, who is also our early learning demo site, who was recognized. From Medina, we have AI Root, we have Ella Canavan, Evolve, Heritage Elementary, and Sidney Fenn, and then finally from Springfield, we have Springfield Elementary School. So if you guys would all come up, and we will give you a nice round of applause for all of you. If you would like to take either a mug or a water bottle, please feel free. Oh, I'm sorry. Please feel free to do that before you sit down. So thank you again, bronze recipients. Congratulations on all of your hard work. We really appreciate it. Thank you. And if you guys would like to come and grab a token of our appreciation. I think Maureen, she is the one who always puts together these nice little things for us, right? All right, so we did have several silver award winners. Silver in the framework indicates that the teams and the schools are implementing the framework at tier 1 and tier 2 with Fidelity. In other words, they're receiving at least 70% on the tier Fidelity inventory for tier 1 and tier 2. And you can see on the screen, we had several schools that met that requirement. So if you are a silver award winner, we would ask that you come up and be acknowledged, and also on your way back down, take a little token of our appreciation. So starting with Aurora City, we have Miller Elementary School that is implementing tier 1 and tier 2 with Fidelity. We have at Barberton Elementary East. Some of you might be coming up more than once, which is good news. In Medina, we have Eliza Northrop and Garfield Elementary. I don't believe we have any Medina representatives today. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I always associate you where you used to work. I'm sorry about that. So we do have Eliza Northrop and Garfield, so come on up from Medina. Twinsburg, we have R.B. Chamberlain. I don't know if we had anybody from Twinsburg. Okay, from Brunswick, we do have a couple of representatives from Brunswick. Their entire, all of their buildings received silver last year, so I will just read those. That's the Brunswick High School, Applewood Elementary School, Crestview Elementary School, Edwards Middle School, Hickory Ridge Elementary, Huntington Elementary, Kidder Elementary, Memorial Elementary, Towsley Elementary, Byzantine Middle School, and Willits Middle School. So those are all of the teams that are implementing tier 1 and tier 2 with Fidelity according to the TFI. So again, I'm going to ask if you'd like to take a token of our appreciation, please do so. Thank you guys, thank you for your hard work. And some of you guys already got one, so you're not taking another. Thank you. Don't take two. Thank you. Thanks, you guys. And then Medina will be coming up one more time. As I said, they weren't here, I apologize. Medina is our first district in the PBIS framework that earned a district award, and basically what that means is that they have a percentage of their buildings based on how many buildings they have that are implementing the framework. They have a district team, they look at district data, they have a district goal, all of the things that we would talk about at a building level, they are doing at a district level. So in our region, Medina City Schools is the first recipient of this award, which is really exciting. So we would like to honor Medina City Schools for being the first district earning a district award for PBIS. So let's give a round of applause. And then, as you noticed, we did not have any gold recipients. We are really hoping for next year that maybe we will have a few buildings, and that would mean that they're implementing the framework in all 3 tiers with at least 70% fidelity at each of those levels. So that would be really, really exciting. The last thing I'm going to leave you guys with before I turn it over is the fact that we are right now in the midst of PBIS recognition and doing TFIs. Can't imagine a better time to be actually going into buildings, conducting TFIs and trying to get things on the calendar. Oh my goodness, this is probably not very good timing, right? But if you are interested in recognition, as I said, all evidence and applications are due May 1st. That is a hard deadline, although maybe I should not say that knowing what's going on. Maybe we may have to adjust that. We were originally saying that's a hard deadline to get the TFI done and then to get all your evidence in. But if you're interested in this PowerPoint presentation or slides presentation, there is a link to all of that information. It is very similar to what we've done in the past if you've gotten recognition before. The only difference is there are some pieces of evidence this year that are highly recommended, and that we are saying if you are going to do the TFI, you really need to have those pieces of evidence to score yourself at the highest level. So that is something that has changed, but the application is there. If you are having any questions regarding that, you can reach out to any of the PBIS consultants. That would be me, Stephanie, Michelle, or Stacy regarding that, and we will be happy to give you information regarding that application. So thank you again for those folks coming in, being recognized. Really, really hard work. And for those of you who are not familiar with the application, the last thing I will say is it is kind of a grueling experience where you are looking at fidelity measures, really being honest and really digging deep into what you're doing, as well as having to provide evidence of what you're doing to us. So it is not an easy process. So the folks that are here are really deserved in that they're really implementing the framework with fidelity, as well as being able to show that they're doing that. So it's very, very impressive to me. We're very able to do that. So thank you again, and I'm going to turn it back over to Jeanine.
Heidi, and thank you to all of our districts and buildings. That is so exciting. All right. I did remember, there was so much going on this morning, that there was one thing that I forgot to say. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of this slide deck just real quick. Hopefully most of you captured this, but what we're trying to do now, in lieu of printing out our materials, is we are presenting our session. Of course, this is blocking it. Here we go. We've published our presentation to the web using this bit.ly. And so if you haven't had a chance, just go ahead and write down this link. It's bit.ly/forum March 2020. And then you have all of our slides. You can follow along right now. And then you can also go back and view the slides later because we are going to share a lot of linked resources. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody had that. It was in my mind of things to do and didn't make my list of things. Sorry about that. Did everybody get it? In a minute? Go update. I'm going to assume this isn't what everybody's here for. Everybody's really here for one this time. Okay. Okay. So I didn't get a chance. Okay. I'm going to do my best to hold a mic and reference pieces of paper all at the same time that everything's pretty much on the slides. Okay. So first thing we wanted you all to know are just some kind of big takeaways of things that we are hearing. And again, lower your expectations. The first one, if you haven't heard, but most have, is that all state employees, including ODE, are under a travel restriction right now. So if you have any meetings that involve Ohio Department of Ed folks, they are either canceled or they are being transitioned to a webinar or some kind of teleconferencing format. And so a lot of state meetings are being canceled, but also district visits are being canceled or rescheduled. So if that hasn't hit you yet, that's something to just sort of be mindful of. Currently, they're thinking through mid-April, but of course, everything is subject to conditions on the ground. So just an FYI there. When we look across the guidance, and I'm going to share some linked resources in a minute that kind of range from general preparedness to specifics for special education. One of the things that we are hearing over and over again, and I'm sure this is on your folks' radar, is to make sure that your emergency operating plan is updated. But specifically, we wanted to address with you all, if you haven't already, to really be thinking about how special education service delivery and supports for students with a variety of needs fits into that. Because depending on when those plans were last updated, they may not include those specific references to additional requirements that have come along since then. One of the things that we definitely would prompt you to consider, whether this goes in your EOP or not, is accessibility if you move to distance learning, which should sound like prepare to meet the needs of diverse learners if teaching and learning goes on, but in a different format. So special education supports do not just shut down, but they may need to switch. Beyond that, we don't have a lot more guidance, but if you make a switch to some kind of distance learning, you've got to think about faith and accessibility. So I think that that is already on everybody's mind, and the question is really how. We are hopeful that both ODE and the federal government will have some more insights and resources for us soon. But for right now, if that's not on your radar, that's what you want to start with. And then, of course, we would really urge you to work with your district's legal counsel, because if you've looked at the state's FAQ, and I mean this in no negative way, but there is a lot of local decision-making being emphasized. So districts will need to decide, districts will need to decide. So in many cases, the state has already kind of push districts, make sure you're working with your legal counsel to get the guidance and the advice that you need to make defensible decisions. That would certainly be the case here. And I do think some local law firms are starting to put out some more general guidance, just realizing that everybody sort of has the same sets of questions. The number one question that we have received right now is, what do we do about ETR and IEP timelines? And my short answer is plan to meet them. And I know that that sounds kind of crazy, but the general thinking is this: the federal law that guides those has not changed or been waived in any way. And the state does not have the authority to override that federal law. Now, if massive changes happen down the road, anything could happen. This is just what's true as of right now. So when it comes to ETR and IEP meetings, I think we all are very familiar with the creativity that you have to use to try to get families to participate, when you have difficulty accessing them, when you have scheduling issues. All of those tricks that you've learned about how we can get people to participate and involve will all be in your toolbox as you make these decisions. But certainly, if you don't have to have face-to-face meetings, if you can do some kind of conferencing, whatever you need to do in that way to keep those meetings going, you definitely should. With ETRs, I think many of you have come to this conclusion, but I just want to say, you guys know, former school psych, I think this way. For as long as schools continue to be open, indefinitely, but if we're hearing talk of closure, my concern as a psych or as a supervisor of psychs would be test as many kids as you can while you can. Because if you have, especially for initial evaluations, if you have open initial ETRs, there may come a day where kids are out of the building and you can't test them. But if psychs are still on duty and the rest of the ETR team is on duty, you can be writing those things up, but you need to have that data. So I would really encourage you to work with your psychologist and anyone else who's collecting that data to think about how they might need to shift their priorities in the coming days. Work with building staff to say, for these handful of kids, unfortunately, we may need to pull them out of classrooms a little bit more than we'd like, because we've got to get this data. And anything that's kind of in that 60-day pipeline, really try to get all that data pulled together as much as possible, so that if schools close down, you've got what you need and you can work on writing it up. But one question that we have also received is, well, so what if schools close tomorrow and we don't have all that data? We've got an initial evaluation. And it's quite likely that that could happen. There are a couple of different options that you have available, and this is a question that ODE has been asked a lot, and I think they're probably going to put out a little bit clearer guidance on this. But in general, you always have the option to contact a parent and say, let's go over the planning form in light of the current circumstances. Is there a way that we could change the way that we gather data that still meets the needs for eligibility, but maybe doesn't involve this type of testing? Beyond that, I'm not going to go too much into some of the creative options around dates and timelines. There are things kind of being bandied about, but ODE is checking with legal on that to sort of see. So right now, I would say plan to meet the timeline, but think creatively about how you can work with teams and families if you need to make those shifts. Certainly, if it's a re-eval, to whatever extent you can do a record review, I would encourage you to do that. Any testing that's not essential for eligibility decision-making or anything critical, I would really try to minimize right now. And again, I'm only speaking for sites and testing and ETRs. If you need the data to serve the student well, you've got to gather it. I'm not saying don't, but just encourage folks to make wise decisions in this time about where they put their time and energy while students are still here. So I'm just going to pause on that one. Any burning questions that I've missed with regard to timelines, especially with regard to ETRs? I feel like my overall guidance is keep calm and carry on. Like, you know, unfortunately, that's all we can do. Another question that we've been asked repeatedly is about compensatory services. Should students not be in school and not be receiving services the way that they typically do through their IEP? How should we proceed? And there, I'm going to show you some resources in a minute, but almost everything says that that has to be decided on a case-by-case basis in terms of the degree to which the student needs that, how that will be delivered, et cetera. So I would not expect there to be any further guidance on that because it is so individualized to the student, their services, and their needs. That's really where I think you're going to want to be working with your district legal counsel to get some sort of decision rules around how you do that. The final big idea that I wanted to share here is that I just learned this yesterday. For Summit ESC, the superintendents who are all kind of working together, there's a shared drive that they are using where they are gathering resources around coronavirus, whether it's, you know, preventative behaviors or guidance or whatever. That's all being collected on a shared drive. The superintendents are the only ones who can access it, but it might be worth asking them, is there anything on there that's been added that's relevant to special education? I just wanted you to know that that is available. And I was able to enable access to that, so I'm going to keep monitoring it. If there's something on it that I think I could share with you all as well. I did hear through the grapevine that the U.S. Department of Ed Office for Special Education Programs was going to issue some guidance because there are so many questions right now. But it hasn't come out yet, and if it has, it's only gone to state leaders. I haven't seen anything yet, but again, if that comes out, I'll share that. So the rest of these resources, I am not going to open up and go through, but you have links to everything. I just wanted to orient you to a couple things that are very helpful. Quick show of hands, who's a member of OAPSA? A good number of you, okay. So if you are a member of OAPSA, you got an email yesterday, because again, there's an awareness that there are a growing number of questions and ODE is working on putting together answers. So this second link here is a Google Doc. A Google Doc for submitting questions that you need to have answered. And you do not need to be an OAPSA member to respond to this poll. So if you follow our bit.ly, you go to that slide, which number it was? Slide 10. Any questions that you have about how to handle this situation from a special education service delivery perspective, go ahead and put there. Now, if you are an OAPSA member, take a look at that email because it listed questions that have already been asked, and you may not want to repeat them. But what I thought I would do is if folks are following along through their bit.ly, I'm actually going to give you a couple of minutes right now if you have a question that you want to put in there, or if you want to just make sure that you can find that link so that you can do it later. I'm going to pause for about 2 minutes to let you do that, and then I'm going to share a couple more resources and then talk about something other than coronavirus. Okay, here it is. Oh, stop. Go away. Okay, there it is. So bit.ly/forum March 2020. And then I believe it was slide 12. Does anybody need me to leave this up a little longer? Oh, no, I'm sorry, it's slide 10. Slide 12 is good too. Okay. All right, so while you all continue to jot your questions out if you want, I'm just going to point out a couple of other things. The fourth bullet down that says case considerations for special education administrators also came out through OAPSA and through CASE. And if you've read that document, you will note that it has all questions and very few answers. But our guidance to you would be this: if it asks you a question, be prepared to answer it. So again, when it says things like, how will you provide services to students with disabilities if, you transition to distance learning or something to that effect? That's the way of telling you you need to be prepared to answer that question. So it's not a guidance document so much as a lot of things to be thinking about. The other resources on this page are general coronavirus ones. They are not specific to special education at all. But I was asked to share this resource that I shared in our office. Not that one, that's scary. We'll get there. Okay, I can't be patient. Is there a way to make it not do this? There we go. The way is don't put links on the bottom of the slide. Oh my gosh. I'm only looking at you, Steph, because you know more about this stuff than I do. You know what? Because this is a really important resource, y'all. Okay, everyone knows how important washing your hands is, right? Okay, so they tell you to sing happy birthday twice, and I don't know about you, but I'm sick of singing happy birthday, so I saw this article on CNN, and I appreciated it. So there are all kinds of songs that you can sing for 20 seconds to wash your hands. So this document has a list of them, but then if you scroll down, it has the section of the chorus that you can sing for 20 seconds. So in the service of a little bit of levity, I'm not going to play you those songs, but just to keep ourselves all safe, and if it helps staff by posting this in the restroom or something, trying to have a little bit of fun. So I'm hearing a lot about Lizzo and Truth Hurts because the lyrics are in our bathroom now. I heard somebody singing Jailhouse Rock the other day, so you know what, if we're going to do all this, we're at least going to have a little fun. Okay. So final things to be thinking about here. Okay, this is just an image that was shared with us. Again, if this is helpful for you all to post somewhere. The final thing that I wanted to share was this first document here from the U.S. Department of Education is a Q&A from back. Remember when H1N1 was the big thing? I remember, I was pregnant at the time. It was scary. So this is a Q&A on providing services to children with disabilities during H1N1, and it anticipates all of the types of challenges that we're facing right now. So I do encourage you to read that. My expectation would be that some of the guidance that may be forthcoming will look and sound very similar. And then the document right below that, letter to Pergament, was about how to make decisions. It wasn't even how to make decisions. It was you need to make case-by-case decisions about compensatory services for disruptions during a teacher strike, which is not the same situation, but it is informative. I will tell you if this document doesn't tell you a whole lot, but it tells you that those decisions need to be made. And then a couple of things that I've shared, and I've tried to make incredibly apparent, this is not in any way a form of guidance, but there are states and districts that are dealing with this in very significant ways that have had to make the decisions that you all are wrestling with right now. And there is some comfort knowing that we are all under the same federal law. So I think it's illustrative to look at the state of Washington, and then this North Shore district, there's a superintendent that just wrote this beautiful articulate post, you may have seen it, about what we're doing and why. That there's just some really good language there. So I am not in any way saying do what these people did. I cannot stress that enough. But it is helpful to see how other folks are being guided. It helps you sort of anticipate what you might be told in the coming days. So with that, I want to make sure that we have time for other updates. But knowing that there's this OAPSA document where you can ask questions, I encourage you to use that. Is there anything that I have missed that you're like, my superintendent said don't come back until you get this question? Anything that you've got to hear back? Okay, here comes Dee for 10 seconds. Good morning, everyone. I'm actually going to say I'm not going to talk to you this morning. I was going to share with you
some of the legal updates from OAPSA around mental health, and some additional considerations that were not discussed in depth about House Bill 410, chronic absenteeism, and the implications for that around child find, and just some things that, that you may need to be considering. And in light of our coronavirus updates, what we're going to do is Helen and I will actually be tackling those topics during our virtual office hours this month. So if that is of interest to you, we encourage you to tune into our office hours as we will talk through some of those items. Okay?
And now I'm going to welcome up here Helen Brophy, who's going to just give you a little bit of an update on the session that some of you all may be involved in and some of you may not.
Okay, good morning. As of last night, I was on emailing with Amy Szymanski till 11 p.m. and our person-to-person OLTS meeting was supposed to take place. We'll emphasize the ESC is not closed, SSTA is not closed, but because this is a state mandated meeting, even though no state people will be here, it Paulo, our superintendent of education, had emailed Amy saying that no state meetings were to be person to person. It would be a webinar canceled. Well, OLTS indicator 14 is mandatory, so it will be a webinar instead of my face-to-face meeting on Monday. I'm going to read the names of the districts again, but I've heard from everybody but one district. So if anybody from Towpath High is here, please see me afterwards. But as of this morning, I received another update. You will all be receiving the access information for the webinar that will still take place on Monday from 9 to 11:30. So it'll still take place. They will need you will sign in and they will get information because they have to keep track that everybody attends. And then Kent State will send out the exit and follow-up survey. So once again, the districts that are involved, I'm not going to say whether you're exit or follow-up because you know that already. Aurora City School District, Brunswick City School District, Buckeye Local, Copley Fairlawn City School District, Coventry Local, Cauga Falls, Green Local Schools, James A. Garfield, Kent City, Medina City, Nordonia Hills City, Bridgetown Local School District, Schnee Learning Center, Summit Academy Secondary, Talmadge City School District, Towpath High School, Twinsburg City School District, and Wadsworth City School District. So if anybody has any questions, you can see me afterwards. But like I said, you should be getting the email this afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you, Helen. Okay, so I'm going to skip through these slides. You do have them, and they were shared at OAPSA, but I appreciate that Helen and Dee are going to touch on them during office hours. So now we are going to spend just a couple minutes sharing some recent resources around neonatal abstinence syndrome, something we're hearing too much about lately. Thanks, Stacey.
Good morning. Those of you that serve in preschool have heard about this from us, but we wanted to share this with everybody in this audience. Neonatal abstinence syndrome is not a new diagnosis, so there's a few reasons why we wanted to bring this to your attention. This past summer, when the Department of Developmental Disabilities redid their rule, this is now a category of eligibility for the DODD. So for children in early intervention, this is now an eligibility category. So we wanted to bring that to your attention because with that, what they're finding is that children, babies that have been exposed, they're finding there is a direct link that would not surprise you between neonatal abstinence syndrome and educational disabilities. And so I've included a link on here with an article that addresses that. And also there's a video on there. It's a 7-minute clip from a news station just explaining what is NAS, what does it look like, what are some things you should be aware of. So we just wanted to bring it to your attention because what is happening is that this diagnosis, like I said, is not new, and health departments have been required to record this information. If there's a child who's born in a hospital and they're diagnosed, it's required to be turned into the health department. But why we're sharing it is that there's been a significant increase And this is just a quick glimpse of a map that shows the average from 2004 to 8, and then again from 11 to 15. And this is looking at the discharge rate per 1,000 live births, and this is the state, and you can kind of see your counties, and again, this is in your PowerPoint presentation. So what you can see is that back in the first map, most of the state was green, which meant 0.5 and 2.5 per 1,000 births. Babies were being diagnosed with NAS. And now when you look in this most recent updated information that they have, the orange is 11.1 to 76 per 1,000 births. And so you can see your counties on there, and just realize there's a significant increase in neonatal abstinence syndrome. And because they're aware of the fact that there are some connections between neonatal abstinence syndrome and developmental delays, this could be part of the reason you are seeing more children coming into preschools and kindergartens and having some more significant issues. Because some of the areas they're looking at are sensory issues and are speech and language and some of those types of issues. And one of the things that was brought to our attention is some of the concerns that they have are not necessarily things that would qualify a child for special education services. However, they're issues that are causing challenges in the preschool and kindergarten environments. So we just wanted you to be aware of this. At the bottom of this, there's a live link that takes you to the maps and a little bit more information. So again, we just want you to be aware because there is a direct link they're seeing from neonatal abstinence syndrome and the rates of children.
Thank you, Stacy. We're just full of good news today, aren't we? Okay, this is actually, in my opinion, good news. Even if some of the data can be a little bit rough to hear, this is empowering. So I'm going to turn this over to Sarah to share a little bit about the Ohio Healthy Students Profile.
Good morning, everybody. I've never spoken to this group of people before, so this is new for me. Good morning. Nice to meet you all.
Chris is one of our Ohio improvement consultants, among other things, gurus. She's also a math and literacy whiz. She knows about PBIS, so don't everyone call her all at the same time, but she's pretty awesome and you'll hear more from her. How was that for an introduction?
This is very interesting information. It's the first time that we've ever had this information, so we wanted to bring you a little bit more detail about who got together to get us this information and maybe what you can do with it. So I did put at the desks, and we weren't sure where everybody would sit, so if you don't have one, you can just raise your hand, we'll send you some, but it's a one-page document, looks like this. If you don't have it, we'll get you one. But it's called the Ohio Healthy Students Profile, and it is developed with a partnership between the Ohio Department of Education and the Ohio Department of Medicaid. They also used a third party to cross-reference SSIDs with the people who were on Medicaid. So the Ohio Department of Education does not have any student names. Okay, so they don't have access to any of that. Even if you email them and say, hey, can you tell me who this is? They can't, they don't have the information. Okay? But what we know is that Each Child, Our Future puts an emphasis on whole child. So the Ohio Department of Education wanted to have a way to bring some information regarding the health and wellness of our students. Okay? So as you can see on here, this was released beginning of February, and it went to superintendents only. So if you have not seen this, you could ask your superintendent for it. They did it for the district level, and they also did it for buildings. But the only way you get a profile is if you have at least 30 students who are Medicaid eligible. Okay, so if you don't have 30 students, you won't have a profile to look at. Okay? And it does put this picture at an aggregate level. If you're at the district level, it's only going to give you percentages. They did not want to put numbers there because they're trying to suppress some specific school data. And we won't get into on how and why they do that, but at the district level, you will only see percentages. At this building level, you will see numbers as long as there is, I said, 30 students that were Medicaid eligible. So what you're going to see in the document is on the back of that one page that I gave you. It's a little bit bigger so you can see a little bit better. That's not the right one. You have it. Okay. I'm like, what? That's not it. In the top corner, it says enter token. Each superintendent was emailed a specific token, so you have to have that number in order to log in and get that. On this slide right here, we do have the link. I don't know if there was what's laser pointer here. Should be. Right there is the link. We'll take you to the page on ODE's website where you can actually get into. So if you have a number, you can put it in there. There's also some really great documents on that site. One of which is what you have in front of you. But also they have, they have a frequently asked questions document. So if you wanted more information on it, as well as a getting started guide. And when I leafed through this quickly, there was some really good questions in here and how to use the document. You can see the 4 major sections on this document are healthcare interactions. And notice it says fiscal year 2018. This data is 2 years old. Okay, so this is from the 17-18 school year. So you will see the top 4 there. Primary care visits, comprehensive well child, dental, vision. Those are the numbers that you would in your district like to see higher, because that means that they are actually going and having those wellness checks. The last 2 in that one, the emergency department visit and acute inpatient stay, we would want to see those numbers to be lower. So when you're looking at that, keep that in mind. Then you will also see they will give you a list of health conditions. There's also education indicators, and that might be one of particular interest to you as we go through. Later I'll come up, I'm going to talk to you about the 1 needs assessment. Those might be some interesting pieces of data to look at as you're doing the needs assessment. And then the interesting part for district administration to keep in mind is the last section. It says district health staff. How many staff members do you have in your district that are related to some sort of health and wellness conditions? So as you start to answer some of these questions, it's a great conversation starter to have in your district to look at how your resources are aligned. If you have many schools that have one of these profiles, and there are certain schools that you can see according to the profile here have higher numbers in certain areas that you would not want to see higher numbers, are you aligning your resources appropriately to take care of what needs might be popping up? So in thinking about how to align your resources for next year and maybe determining some root cause analysis, one of the other discussion points that they have in the Getting Started guide was determining a root cause, whether it's an access issue or a use issue. Is it that they don't have access, or do they have access and they're not using it? So that you can really start to figure out how you can help school, the parents, the community address some of those concerns. Okay, so very brief. You have to have 30 students, and also if you don't have a minimum number of 11, they also didn't put the data in here, but if you use that link on the 2 slides previous, you will go there, you will get all these different documents that I've told you that are on there, and you can dig into it more if that is something that interests you or something that your school is beginning to look at. I don't know that I have the answers to a lot of questions, but if does anybody have one, I will attempt to answer, or we can at least see if we can find out.
Okay. So far, so good. Okay, you're going to hear more from Chris in just a little bit about the 1 needs assessment. But I remember I don't have my agenda in front of me. Am I the next one? Yes. Probably I am. Thank you, Steph. I was like, how do I interpret that wink she just gave me? I don't know what that means. It's me. Okay, so this is like the least newsworthy because you all have heard this via email, but just an update. We are not hearing any changes to this, so everything seems full steam ahead. But the long-awaited disproportionality data is expected to be released in late March 2020. I guess the good news of Ohio Department of Ed being on lockdown is they have more time to crunch the data. So I'm trying to think positively about this. So this is going to come out in phases, though, and we talked about this before, but just a reminder, Phase 1 is basically going to be any data that you have to act on. So it's going to be the new disproportionality categories, the compliance indicators that we all know and love, indicators 4, 10, I think it's already, and 9 and 10 are already out, because that's one of the discount indicators, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So those are the ones that are going to come out, and that includes survey indicators. But then phase 2 is all that kind of performance level data that we do use to make decisions about student programming, but you're not required to do any kind of corrective action or record submission on. That's expected to come out in late April 2020. And the plan for the future is not to continue to do this phase release. This is just sort of a one-time, we got to do it in batches because there's so much new data to manage. So going forward, we do expect the special education profile to come out all as one. This is just this year. In light of everything going on with potential closures and remote work and all that, please know that anything related to those compliance indicators that we need to communicate and share will be high priority for us. So those are the kinds of sessions that we may choose to do by webinar or some kind of electronic recording, because as far as we know right now, there's no expectations that timelines would change in the event of some kind of disruption, because again, those are dictated by IDEA. And so unless the federal government provides some sort of waiver, for the meantime, all of those timelines need to follow as they typically would. So we're kind of developing our plans for support right now. We have not seen the data, so we don't know what findings to plan for, but we've got some ideas and are working on that. But as soon as we have specific dates and times and information to share, that will get right out to you, and we will do our best not to disrupt that in any way. Should have ended on the healthy students one. That was more positive. This is a little like backward looking down. So, okay. So we actually are just a couple of minutes ahead of schedule. So I just want to pause again because my spidey sense tells me that there are lots of questions and things on people's mind, but they have not quite come out yet. So is there anything else that has yet to be mentioned? Any other burning questions? Again, we will give you time to network and brainstorm after we stop the recording. If you want to just talk, like, how are you guys thinking about doing this? But just questions that we can answer or tell you there is no answer for. Hopefully. Kelly.
Have you heard districts share about trying to still service make their most modern students remotely or have to come into school?
Okay, I'm going to repeat the question. Hopefully I heard it all the way. Have we heard anything about districts' plans for meeting the needs of the students with the most severe disabilities in the event of a disruption?
Really related services more than anything.
Related services. I have not heard anything specific. I think I've heard more questions than any kind of answers or ideas. So if this is something that you're thinking about in your own district, or if you've come up with some plans, that would be a great networking topic. We're going to save about the last 15-20 minutes for networking. If folks want to share, I'm going to hold off on asking you all now, but if you've got ideas or if you're hearing things, that would be great. That was one of my kind of motives for peeking at some of the districts out of state, was to see if I could get a window into that, but I have a feeling they're not communicating that on that quite large of a level. Good question. I'm sorry that I don't have an answer. Again, we're hopeful that ODE will provide some window into that, but I have a feeling a lot of it's going to be case-by-case. I'm just overgrouped this morning. Okay. All right. Well, then, what I would like to do is go ahead and shift gears into our main topic for the day. Okay. Let me just share with you what's in our slide deck, because we wanted to actually. Steph, do you think we have time to do a couple of these resources? Sure. Okay. Let me just say that these are in here. Do you want to come up and do the resources?
No. I mean, I can if you'd like. They're the resources on this one are just quick links. They're all from OCALI. This one I'm going to dive into because I have a toddler in my own life, but this one is a set of videos for young children. And then the next one is more tips on interacting with autism, and I was impressed at the various languages that they are available in. This continues supports for students with autism. No surprise in this room, this continues to be a request that we still get, and OCALI continues to impress us that they are, recreating and posting new resources all the time. So we just wanted to make sure that you had access to those links. those are the only resources this time. I think the updates on upcoming trainings might be helpful.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Steph. I should have brushed the microphone over, but I thought that'd be a little awkward. So I think that
I'm loud enough.
you are perfect. Use your teacher voice. Okay, so upcoming training and support options, I'm not going to go into great depth on, but these are all in the slide deck that you have access to and that we will push out via email. But just a reminder of a couple sessions that are coming up. The first one is around R-TFI, the Reading Tiered Fidelity Inventory. If you're familiar with the TFI for PBIS, it works very similarly, but it is around assessing your multi-tiered system of support, or RTI, around literacy. And so Tracy Mail is going to offer a session, maybe Tracy and Annette, I'm not sure, in May on how to complete one. We have completed several ourselves. Actually, Tracy's done quite a few. They are definitely something that can be done by district personnel, but we've learned a lot about some of the better ways to do it and some things that might get in your way, as well as kind of how do you think long-term about what you do with that information in planning for your RTI or MTSS system. So the links are there for an AM or a PM session on the RTFI. We also are putting out an adolescent literacy series, but this was actually born before the whole coronavirus thing. We really are trying to explore alternative methods of sharing information with you, because more and more we find that folks are saying it is just really hard to be out of the district or to release teachers, to get subs. So this is a webinar series. I like how it says Debbie Thurl and Tracy Mail and friends. But our goal here is we know that literacy is a major focus statewide. There's been a ton of emphasis around early literacy, and I think with right reason. But we also are very mindful that there are our older students who have a long history of literacy difficulty and who need support right now. And what can we be doing to help improve their outcomes and improve those foundational skills that are so important? So this is a series that is being developed. It will be posted on our SSTA YouTube channel, and as new webinars and podcasts come out, we will share them. So that you know that they're coming out. So far we have one, we have another one on its way. But this is something that's going to roll out, this bundle one is going to roll out to the end of this year, and then there's a second bundle that we have planned for next year as well. So stay tuned, we'll keep sharing that, but make sure that you share that information with folks that you think might be interested or benefit. Helen, anything you want to say? I lost Helen, she's not here. About the Parent Transition Academy, I'll just tell you, so right now, it's still going on, and there's an April 23rd session with information to register. This is a session for parents to help them prepare for their students' transition. So not something that you would necessarily be registering for, but definitely something we ask for you to push out to your family community. And then, as Dee mentioned, we do have office hours coming up every month. This is something that we've been really happy to offer. It is not to say that we will not answer questions as they come up, but it's been nice to have a dedicated time to really put out some of those most common Q&A. And Dee's already given kind of an FYI of what to expect from that. Okay, and then OCALICON, probably saw a call for proposals. It just opened in mid-February. It closes in a couple of more weeks. Again, carry on, proceed, everything's going to go as usual. We know that there are a lot of really creative, innovative practices going on in our region, and so we always want to encourage folks who are learning and have something to share about what they're learning about service delivery for all students with disabilities, not just autism and low incidence, which is the origin of that conference. We encourage you to share out what you're learning and what you're doing with the rest of the state. And then finally, if you're able to stick around a little bit longer, right after this session, there's another session that Summit ESC is putting on. It's called No Place Like Hope, and it's a part of the Mental Health and Trauma series. So if you're not registered for it, but that sounds really cool and you want to attend, I'm pretty sure they can accommodate you. First annual, and I'm blowing through everyone's updates because I'm going really quickly. If anybody needs to jump in, please do. The first annual School Safety Summit, again, the information is here, June 10th through 12th. As of right now, still going on. A lot of really good information and folks from around the state, including law enforcement and mental health and behavior support folks. So all of these are available in our slides. If you want to longer, I'm going to try to see if I can do this, but it's not working.
They're a little touchy, yeah.
They're a little glitchy.
All right, so I'm not sure if any of you have heard about one needs assessment or not. some of you may have attended our training in February. And we're going to provide a time, and when my session is done, to hear from voices from the field that have started this or are thinking about it and what you've done so far to maybe work through this, and then allow time for questions and for you to kind of network a little bit and share some ideas. But the big news around One Needs Assessment is that it now replaces. I talked with my hands a lot. So we will use this.
Oh, much better.
All right. This One Needs Assessment is part of the broader picture of what is known fondly at ODE as EdSteps. And of course, it's another acronym, which stands for the Education Department's System of Tiered Fee Plans and Supports. That's a mouthful, so we just say EdSteps. And this whole system is not completed yet. It's still in the design phase. And the very first part of this phase is the needs assessment, which is right here. So we're at the very first block. We do have 3 pilot districts/schools in our region, and that is Akron Public Schools, Black River, and Summit Academy Middle School. So they are part of the pilot, so they're doing the needs assessment right now, and they are actually creating the one plan in the system this year. So what does this mean for you? Are all of you familiar with the words decision framework? Okay, it no longer exists. So it has gone away. It can no longer be used. So that is what the One Needs Assessment is replacing. We will get into this a little bit more later on in the slides, but you do have 2 options this year, neither of which is the decision framework. Okay, so you can do the One Needs Assessment, and then there is one other comprehensive assessment that you can do if you choose not to do the One Needs Assessment. But this is the only year that there is still an option. Beginning next year, the only way to do your needs assessment is through EdSteps. So many of our districts are trying it this year because it's a great opportunity while it's still in a pilot phase and we're learning to see how it goes, to see what you might need to change for next year. And beginning next year, we are going to start to roll out, when I say we, I mean ODE. They're going to assign districts to a cohort. And it's rolling out in a 3-year phase. We're not sure. We thought districts would know by now if they were in cohort 1, but we have not received that information, so we're not sure when that's coming out. But you will be notified soon of what cohort you are in. Okay, so this year it's the pilots. Starting next year, there are districts and community schools that will be required to actually do this. The nice thing about it is, once you get to the one plan part, it's a 3-year plan. So you don't have to do it every year. You can do it once every 3 years and just make updates as necessary. So if things pop up or you have something occurring in your district, you're like, wait, we need to put this in our plan, you can still do that. And it's not as cumbersome as the decision framework when you had to try to roll things over. If you make a change in needs assessment, when you get to the appropriate page, you can just roll new things over. And it's supposed to work pretty seamlessly, so we'll see. It's a good opportunity, though, as I said, for everybody to try because ODE does want feedback. How it works for you, what you found you liked, what was cumbersome, what didn't work well. So they are anticipating a lot of feedback so that they can make those adjustments and make it better for next year. Okay. So again, this tool was just rolled out in January for the pilot districts, and it will replace the decision framework. And this first version, as I said, is designed to get everybody used to identifying all their needs in a standard location. Everything all in one place. The hope is eventually anytime you apply for grants and any other kind of funding, it all comes through this system and you don't have to complete multiple needs assessments. Hence the one needs assessment and the one plan. What that will look like, we're still waiting to see, but that is the goal of this. And then it also can help assist in the design and the development of what ODE is trying to roll out. So they are really looking for good feedback.
So just real quick, what I forgot to say in the introduction is We did a session on this with our region, with districts that are going to be participating in this because they're participating in the pilot or that are interested. And we got a lot of questions around fiscal issues that are a little bit beyond our scope of work. So in particular, we got some questions that we can anticipate that you also might have. When you think about how a needs assessment is supposed to connect to a plan and the plan supports the funding or vice versa, we know that you're going to have questions around those things. And so we did reach out to OEE. We had hoped that we might have at least a little bit of guidance on that, but we have not yet heard back. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that what we're hoping to share today is really around the decision-making from the data perspective and how you determine priorities. We're aware that that's going to trigger questions about the fiscal implications. The good news is we're hoping that for this year, there are none because you're not required to do the plan. You're just testing out the needs assessment. But if you have those questions and you want to jot them down, we'd be happy to capture them. We can predict some of them, but any others, we will pass them along and we will share them when we have them. So we're really just taking this from a needs assessment decision-making perspective. Okay, sorry.
No, thank you for sharing that. And we will probably say some of that information again towards the end, which is very true. So what we're going to look at today is specifically what a needs assessment looks like and why we're presenting this information to you. What role does it play within your scope of work? So the current decision framework, well, it's not current anymore. Last year's decision framework, it was data-driven. If you've worked in a decision framework at all, you knew 2 years ago the report card data was in there. Last year they didn't put it in there. So it is data-driven. It does focus on a few high-impact items. Has anybody in here actually done the decision framework? Okay, so I don't want to get too in-depth with it. Okay, if you did, you know, bless you, that you had to be careful how many items you selected because it could grow exponentially very quickly. All right, so you wanted to focus on a few high-impact items, and then it helped you create your plan, which you sent to the CCIP. The one needs assessment you're going to see is very similar. It is also data-driven, but it is more data-driven than the decision framework because decision framework only looked at report card data. This looks at all kinds of data, one of which is what I showed you earlier, that's healthy student profile. That would be a piece of data that you could use in one needs assessment. Here's the new part. It's comprehensive, hence the idea not just report card data. Do you have PBIS information? Do you have health and wellness information? Do you have fiscal information you need in there? Do you have curriculum issues that you need to look at that don't show up in the report card? Are there things about college and career readiness, transition? So it takes into account a very comprehensive view, and you'll see that here in just a moment. We still want to make sure we're focusing on a few high impact items, but the nice thing about the one needs assessment is it doesn't grow exponentially. You can say this is a high priority, and then it won't give you additional questions. You can just mark it as a high priority. And then finally, it will also help you create a plan to send to the CCIP. Today, though, this year, the only people doing this are those in the pilot. For those of you that are not in the pilot, you will still proceed with the CCIP as you have in the past, as of what we know today. Okay? What that looks like, I'm not sure if you'll see anything different, but it should be very, very similar. So when we talk about comprehensive, here's what you're going to notice. There are 8 different, what they were called, you might have heard the word buckets. They call them buckets, now they call them improvement areas. So there are 8 improvement areas or sections in the one needs assessment. Here are the first 4. Again, you can see very comprehensive look, college and career readiness, community and family engagement, of course, curriculum instruction assessment, fiscal management, those are the first 4. And then here are the other 4. They talk about leadership, operations, professional capital, and then school climate and support. So it is a very comprehensive look, which when I think about ODE rolling out the big placemat where it's looking at the whole child, they are really sticking to their vision of the whole child, and they are taking a very comprehensive look. So I think that is something positive coming from ODE, where they're really trying to take the big picture in. So one thing you're going to notice when we get into this document here in a moment is the 8 improvement areas on this slide are on the left. There are different, what they call groupings within each improvement area. So for example, in college and career readiness, there are 4 different groupings. There's an early warning system, there are questions around graduation, post-secondary, and career connections. You can see family engagement, it only has one grouping, okay? Look at curriculum instruction assessment. Does this meet your expectations? Would you expect the most sections within that? Probably that is what we do in education, that's where it's at. But you'll see it has ELA and math, has instruction, standards alignment, look, students with disabilities, English learners, homeless, foster care, neglected and delinquent, military. So all of those sorts of questions are in here as well. You can see there are 4 under fiscal management, shared, our leadership only has 1 section. Operations, I don't know that anybody has ever looked at nutrition and transportation in a needs assessment before when they did the decision framework. So this really is getting into whole child. Professional capital, if anybody has an equity flag in their CCIP or you know you're working on it, there will be questions here around equity, and then we're looking at recruitment and hiring. And then school time and supports, safe and healthy schools. There's your student healthy profile, or healthy student profile. Behavioral supports, transition, attendance, and PBIS. Okay, so it really is a very, very comprehensive look. And what you're probably sitting here wondering, and I didn't know where to put this slide, I put it earlier, put it here, and last night I made some changes, I put it here. Why do you need to know this information? Why is this important to you? This is not your regular scope of work. Well, knowing that those different questions are in there now, you may have people in your administration reaching out to you because there are some questions in here that they're probably not going to be able to answer, okay? So what I'd like you to do right now is we want to take a look at this questions and triggers document. It is this one that was sitting at your place when you walked in. If you do not have one, let us know. We'll bring some around to you, but I think everybody probably has one if you had the healthy student profile. All right, this, I'm going to take you through this a little bit at a time. This is what they have fondly called the questions and triggers document, okay? So let's take a look at it, deconstruct it a bit, and then I want to give you a minute to look at it. Along the left-hand side, you will see the improvement area, okay? So on the very front page, we'll just go through this one. It says college and career readiness, and you will see there are one that goes through the entire first page, probably onto the second page. Notice the group name. Remember on this one where I told you there were 4 groups? So you'll see the first one where it says group name is early warning system. So there are 1, 2, 3 questions in the early warning system group. The next grouping was graduation. So then you will see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions around graduation. Okay? So that is how this document is set up. Improvement area on the left, next is the group name. Okay? Then you see what the question is. So let's just look at the first one just to see what it says. So under college and career readiness, under the early warning group, okay, question number 1 is, how are you identifying students that are at risk of dropping out? That is the first question, okay? Notice the answer type is next. It's just something you'll type in. Then it gets into the parts that you are going to want to know. Who is required to answer this question? And what you will notice if you look all the way across is this is an optional question for everybody. Nobody at this point is required to answer that question. So what does this mean for you? Maybe nothing, okay? But if your district or your school has identified that you have students that are at risk of dropping out, even though it's not required, they may want to dive into this question. And if that has anything to do with some of the students that you help provide services for and you advocate for, they may come to you looking for, hey, what do we do for these kids? Okay? But again, that is optional. Nobody's required to answer it. Whereas if you go just a few questions down, look at question 7, still under college and career readiness, but now we're under graduation. What data are used to determine if students are not on track for graduation? Again, it's a text, but now we've got some required triggers. If you have a federal graduation rate at or below 67%, that is a required question for your district or school. Okay, that is what will trigger the question. So as you look through this document, we're going to know, okay, so what will my district have to answer? What might they be coming to me for? And if you go to page, let's see if I can find it. All right, I think it's going to be page 5. If you go to page 5, under curriculum and instruction and assessment, the third one down is question 35. It says special populations of students with disabilities. What data speaks to how students' needs are identified through the evaluation team report and individualized education program goals are being monitored and improved? That should sound like common language to you. That should sound very familiar. To someone like me, I go, okay, okay, TRI, okay. But I would go to a person who has more information on that. So who has to answer that question? Well, if you follow along, required trigger for a district is if you are intensive. Okay? Recommended, again, recommended is not required, but if you're a moderate DF district, they're going to say, we recommend you take a look at this question. Whether you answer or not would be up to you. But again, if the district says, no, we need to look at our students with disabilities population, we need help on this, we need to answer it, they may come to you for some additional support. Who has to answer it as a school? Well, the next column over, notice it says required trigger school, and that would be if you're a priority and focus building specifically for students with disabilities. Okay. And then you'll notice the next one is the recommended school trigger. So what I wanted to do is give you a moment to leaf through here. We put highlighters at your desk as well. So if you wanted to look, again, you may want to check out all of those questions. You might want to look at English learners. You may want to come down here and look at behavioral supports, safe and healthy schools. But we wanted you to give you a minute to look through this document and highlight some of the questions that you may wish to probe your district about and see if they are thinking about doing the one needs assessment and if they're looking through it. So I wanted to give you just a few minutes to read through. If you have a question, raise your hand. There are a few other people that could probably help answer a few questions if you had them. But take a few minutes, turn and talk to the person sitting next to you, and we'll come back in just a few. Now, this is probably the last thing on your mind today. I can only imagine what it's like back in the buildings and districts right now. I was a building principal, and I've been looking at the ODE website, looking under what administrators should do, and it took me right back to that spot and all of the pressure that is on you and how to say things and word them. So I know this is not top priority today, but did anybody see anything that they wanted to bring up or talk about or just share with the group? Okay. You might be curious about where this actual information is located and where this one needs assessment is at, and you may or may not have access to it. If you log into your OHID account, also known as your SAFE account, and you see this tile, then you probably have access. It will say one needs assessment. If you had decision framework access, you automatically have one needs assessment access because those roles just rolled over, okay? If you want access, you need to check with your district and check your OEDS role and see if they are willing to give you access. And there are two different. You can have data entry or data view. Data view meaning you can see it, you just can't change anything. Data entry meaning, nope, you can have access to this and you can upload the information that you need to load in here. So that's up to you. I don't know how your district feels. I don't know how you feel. You may say, nope, I don't want another thing that I'm responsible for. I don't even want to know about it. I don't even want to tell you. And that's fine. But for those of you who might like it, that's how you get it. So this is the time when we wanted to allow you a chance to talk with each other. And here were some questions that we thought that you might want to chat about. What data do you think your district will need to have access to or look at in order to answer some of those questions? Do you have that data, or are you able to locate it and can you provide it? What questions might your district or school have trouble answering? And why would they have trouble with that? Is it lack of knowledge? Is it lack of access? You know, just thinking ahead of time about where they might have troubles. And something I alluded to earlier, which questions would you want to ensure are answered, even if the question isn't triggered as a required question? Did you come across anything in there and say, I really think we need to look at this? You know, and do you want to talk to your curriculum director or whomever is responsible for the one needs assessment? You might be thinking about, I wonder what data I have available or what evidence is available. The other thing that I did not show you, because I didn't want to delve into the tool a whole lot, after each grouping in there, when you answer questions, the final question will be, what is the root cause? And if you type something in the box for a root cause, you automatically get another question asking, do you want to make this a priority? And again, unlike decision framework, don't be afraid to check yes. You can check yes, it doesn't mean you're going to get additional questions. It's just later on when it comes time to send it to CCIP, it will remind you, hey, you said this was a priority, do you want to send it along? Okay, so you might want to think about how you can get to root cause answers, whether you use a 5Y or you have other ways to getting to the root. And then what might be next steps for your district. Okay. Does anybody want to take time to stop and chat about these, or do you feel comfortable moving on? I want to give you time if you want time, but I also know there's a million other things on your mind today. Or maybe just one really big thing. Not a million little things today, just that one really big thing. Okay. I wanted to share with you what one of our districts did that is in the pilot around how to get information from people. You do not have to do it this way, but this is just a suggestion. This team took the math areas. They took all the math questions. They put it into a Google Doc. I don't know if they used the spreadsheet or if they used a table in the document, whatever they're using, it doesn't matter. They put the question there, they put down who they want to respond, a place, I'm so sorry, a place for their response, and then what data or evidence that they want to put into there. Okay? Just one way to capture it. Also a good idea that you capture it in a Google document first before you put it into the site in case when it doesn't save or something gets lost or something weird happens. I'm sure that has never happened to anybody in any site that they're in, but we suggest doing that just as a fail-safe so you don't waste all that time typing it in and then you lose it and you don't have it. So that is just one idea that one of our districts is doing with all of the questions, just to help kind of streamline the process. Now, I did mention at the beginning that there are two ways that you can do that this year. The first one is the one needs assessment, which is what I kind of just gave you a very brief overview of. If you are not interested in going through that process this year, or your district has made the decision we're not doing it, there is one other way to do it this year, not the decision framework, but it's called the Comprehensive Needs Assessment, and it is built within the CCIP. So you have to do it in the CCIP account, okay? So here's the basics of the needs assessment. Any district that does not complete the one needs assessment and sends results to CCIP has to complete the one in the planning tool, in the Comprehensive Continuous Improvement Plan tool. Okay, so you have to do one of them if you want federal funds. Okay. This year only, districts have the choice. Oh, come back, come back, come back. Next year, there's no choice. It's just the one needs assessment. Again, we can foresee that you would have questions about, if we don't get a question triggered for students with disabilities, how can we ensure funding? That's the question we can't answer today. We're not sure what that looks like. And there's another question around a phrase that I'm not extremely familiar with, but may be familiar to you, of maintenance of effort. Okay? We're not exactly sure what that looks like either. But if you have some, we are working on answers to those too, but if you have specific federal funding questions, we highly suggest you reach out to your contact at federal programs. They are going to have the best answer for you, not us. Especially me. My work is school improvement mostly, and I can talk about the one needs assessment, and I can get you questions there, but when it comes to funding, state support team really doesn't have any role in that lane. So if you have those questions, we encourage you to reach out. If you have some specific ones, you're like, hey, can you just check on this for me, or do you know, jot them down, get them to us, we'll see what we can find out for you.
And OEC does have leadership representatives on the planning team for this, and they are aware of the potential challenges that special education funds could run into with this. So even though they don't have answers right this second, they're aware of it and kind of working through it. So I think many of the questions that you are thinking of have been anticipated, and they're just working through kind of how they make it work in the system and how they communicate that out to the field. But again, share those questions up to your federal program contact and or let us know, and we can pass them on as we.
And I would imagine, just like you all have one big thing on your mind, ODE is dealing with that same thing right now, so they're not interested in getting questions to this answered right away, so we have some time, but I think we all could just learn to be a little kind, a little patient, and a little empathetic, and just maybe not take a deep breath when you're within 6 feet of somebody, but step back, take a deep breath, breathe, we'll do our best to get through it. Okay. So if you decide to do the comprehensive plan or the comprehensive needs assessment in the CCIP, districts will need to provide their own relevant data. Remember, it's not just report card data anymore. There are those 8 improvement areas. Those same 8 improvement areas that I showed you earlier that are on the questions and triggers document, those same 8 areas are in the CCIP. So the district would have to provide their own data in each of those sections to come up with the root cause to select a priority need. Still going to select a SMART goal, and remember I told you the old language was buckets, it still shows up in some places. So each of those improvement areas will be on there for you to take a look at and provide some input. So at this point, this is where, if anybody is already doing this or came in February to our training, and you had some suggestions for others who are thinking about it, we wanted to give you an opportunity to say how it was going and what you're thinking of, and also a time for questions from the field. Again, I know that I can look out at the faces and everybody's like, but we're here for you, I'm here for you if you need something. So is there anything anybody wants to share or ask? I did the same thing. I feel like there's a ton of questions. I just don't know if it's around this. I can see hesitancy.
I have a question for the group. How many of you know that your district or building will be completing the one needs assessment as opposed to the new or the prior version? Hands up. Okay.
Maybe a follow-up to that is, how many of you have no idea what your district is doing?
Totally fair.
Yep. It might not have been something that they've talked about yet. I know that we have encouraged as many districts that are willing to give it a try this year. This is probably the one year where we can still plead ignorance or, hey, I didn't know that, and we will fix it, because it's just the test out here to see how it goes. So if you have the time and capability to do it, we highly encourage it, because next year you have to do it anyway. So if you've got the shot, you can take a chance and see how it goes and figure out what you were going to do differently next year. But again, you have 2 options this year. And I'm sure nobody will be concerned if I finish my part a few minutes early. I don't want to overwhelm you with data, but I want to make sure you had enough that you could go back to your district to have an informed conversation, or maybe even ask some probing questions. Oh, there is one other thing. Not that you're all of that interested, but there are some extra questions and triggers documents on the back table there. So if you wanted to take some for some other people in your office or some teachers to think about that you know you might want to get some information from, they're back there.
Okay. No, if you can just turn it off, that's fine. Okay. I think without much further, I'm navigating through my own computer's version of the slide, as if you can see them. So we did promise that we would allow some time for networking. I'm just looking at this picture because I was like, what's floating around these people? And I'm like, what are they, germs or something? No, you can't see. They're like light bulbs and little dialogue boxes. It's fascinating to me how all of our thinking is shifting. So we'll come back to this in just a second. Just a couple of other things. As always, just make sure that you stay up to date through our website, sst8.org. Under news and events, we have our event calendar there. But any changes to any events, obviously we'll communicate in other ways, including through email. We have started doing a weekly updates email, and we're sending out to kind of all of the major groups of educators, not just folks who come to special ed forums. So hopefully you're getting those. If you're not, email me and we will get you on that list. You can email me by going to our website, finding me in the staff directory, and then there's a little button that you can push to contact me directly. So if you're not getting those weekly updates, please let me know and we'll get them to you. A couple of things, we're always trying to kind of share out what we're listening to and thinking about these days. So we've got a couple of different inclusion podcasts and kind of considerations around LRE and decision making. And I like this mind shift one, teaching 6-year-olds about privilege and power. Wow. The other thing is Stephanie shared with me a really great article around our new favorite subject, coronavirus, and decision-making around district closure, but thinking about all the things that students lose access to from an equity perspective, from a support services perspective, food, all of that, and how different populations of students may be affected by those decisions. So when we send this out, we'll send a link to that article as well. It's just food for thought. But again, I think these are things that this group of people is sort of disproportionately impacted by and has to weigh into their district when these decisions are being made.